So Hannah, you talk about turning parenting lemons into lemonade. What does that mean? Because I love the saying.
Yeah, turning parenting lemons into lemonade is really for taking accountability for those times when you really blow your cover as a parent. No one's going to be perfect. There's going to be moments when you react without thinking, where you say things that you don't mean, when you lose your temper, and you're basically not being the mature grown-up that you really hope and wish you could be for your Instagram reel. So in those times, it's actually about acknowledging what's happened, being honest about it, being authentic about it, and taking accountability, and then showing your kids what that looks like. Because in those times, we create ruptures in our relationships with our kids, and ruptures are actually fine so long as there is a repair. It's when there's not a repair that's what's causing damage. But if there's a rupture and a repair, that is actually something that can count towards their resilience, because you're role modeling how to reconcile your relationship when you've had a bit of a problem. So yeah, but as parents, we are going to make mistakes. We're only human. Everyone is going to make mistakes, and it's really important actually that we show our kids that it's okay to make mistakes too. And I think we all have grown up probably with a really harsh self-critic in our heads, and often felt that, probably we've had that experience as kids where our parents have come down pretty hard on us for making mistakes. They've lost their temper, and then we felt actually it's not that safe. It's not that safe to make mistakes, and we can be really hard on ourselves for it. But when we look at mistakes in a different light, and when we look at them not as a failure, but as an opportunity just to make a course correction, a failure will grind us to a halt, but a course correction keeps us looking and moving forward. And that's about having a growth mindset. And I think, the powerful thing about changing the way that you look at the mistakes you make as a parent and being able to turn the lemons into lemonade is that we give ourselves permission to make some mistakes because we know that we can fix it. And we give our kids permission to make mistakes and know that they can fix it too. And then they can see that, in fact, it's not a big deal to make a mistake, to say sorry, to, for everyone's feelings to be validated, and that everybody can move on. And I think that's really important. So that's why I like to look at this in this way.
Yeah, it's so true, because we do, as parents, we do try and do the right thing, but it's so easy to accidentally join your children in their behavior sometimes. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's a really great tip that, we've got to, I guess, be okay with that and just repair it. Because what happens if we don't repair those ruptures with our children?
Yeah, I mean, I say on our Instagram, we've got a little quote up there that says, "You can't solve chaos with chaos." And you can't. And I think it's very easy when everyone is heightened emotionally that things can get out of control. And it's then our responsibility as a parent to bring it down and to bring it back. I think, our fear as a parent, if we make a mistake, is that our kids are going to lose respect for our authority. But in fact, the opposite is true, because what happens if we create a rupture with our kids, but then we don't repair it, is that they actually feel quite insecure, because they know that what we've done is not genuine and authentic. And that's a situation that we will lose them a bit. But if we acknowledge what we've done and we go, yeah, okay, I messed up there and I'm sorry, and it's not your fault, and I'm going to do these things to try and do better, then that is creating that repair. Yeah.
So when with your own kids, I guess, when have you seen the biggest impact of turning your parenting lemons into lemonade? Because it is tough sometimes to swallow your pride and say, I haven't handled this situation the best way possible.
Yeah. I had a real big one, and I didn't even know that the lemon was there. And I'm really glad that after it had happened, I actually went back and revisited that, because situations are redeemable. It doesn't, whether it happens in the moment or whether you've got to circle back, like, people are redeemable and situations are redeemable, and that's a really good thing to demonstrate. So in our situation, it was actually, I had to explain to the kids that their dad and I were separating, and that we were going to be we were going to have 2 homes, and the whole situation and setup was going to be different. And I had to explain to them how this was going to affect them. And, given the work that I do, I had done my research and I had figured out what I needed to say, what I should say, what they needed to know, what their primary concerns might be. And so I sat down to do this. And as I went into it, my daughter, who was 5 at the time, burst into hysterical tears. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I've absolutely blown it. And in that moment, I was horrified, and I was worrying so much about what the impact on them was going to be from our separation and from having to move and everything that was changing. And, I really didn't know in that moment what I had done so wrong, and also how to make it better. But anyway, we moved through and we carried on. And later, when we've moved to our new house and we're sitting around the dinner table one night, I said to them, guys, like, we've been through a lot of changes, haven't we? We had to move house after the earthquake, and then we had to, build, and we had to do this and that, and now we've moved house again. We've been through so many changes. How are you feeling about that? Now you've got 2 homes, and now we're here. And my daughter said, "Oh, Mum, when you told us," and I cried. She said, "I thought that what was happening was that you and Dad were going to live in one house, and Alex and I, her brother, were going to live in the other house." And there's such a massive chasm between adult logic and child logic, because we understand the context of what a separation means and what happens, and the whole 2 homes scenario. But for kids, this is fresh territory, and she had no idea. And if we hadn't had that conversation, I wouldn't have known the mistake that I had made, that I hadn't been explicit enough in what I was saying to explain to her in a way that she really understood the practicalities of what was happening, because she was concerned about the practicalities of what living with her brother was going to be like, and I would be concerned too. However, it gave me that moment, in a time when we were calm and we were relaxed and we were just talking gently with one another, that we could actually go, I could actually say, "Oh, honey, that must have been really scary for you. I can understand why that made you feel upset," and actually really acknowledge and validate her experience for that moment. And then also to finish that off with something positive about acknowledging, where we were at and how far we had come and what the future was going to look like, and sort of finish on a really positive note. So, but if I hadn't gone back there, if I hadn't circled back to that and really checked in with them, I wouldn't have known how to make that into lemonade. And she was able then, and I think with probably a bit of space and distance from that experience, to be able to articulate that. And I'm so grateful that she could. So that was a really big one for me. And it made me realize that, sometimes when we do lose it, and sometimes if we make a mistake or we get it wrong, not to just brush it under the rug, but to actually go back and go, what, this morning, I got a bit grumpy about this, and I just want to talk to you about that because it's been on my mind. And to go back and revisit it, and then give them a chance to have a voice in that situation as well. And I think once the emotions have passed, it's easier to go back and deal with that stuff.
Wow, what a story. I guess it's so interesting how kids perceive things, and how awesome that you got to go back and revisit that one.
I know, and in a way, it's terrible, but it's also quite funny.
Oh, absolutely. That'll be a good one for the 21st. So on a more, I guess, practical level, what does it sound like for parents to repair their ruptures, like on the smaller sort of ones? Because you gave a really great reference just then. I love how you just spoke about how you talk to your children when you do have those moments. Have you got any other tips and advice for our listeners to deal with those?
Yeah. So it's quite handy when you've got some vocabulary and some language to put around these things. So on a smaller level, and I'll give you a practical example from our house, and I'm sure I won't be the only one, but we have this rule in our house. Basically, so long as you're not saying anything, cruel to anyone or calling each other names, you can basically say what you want, because I'd prefer to have honesty and openness, even if it's harder to hear, than for things to go unsaid. Because basically, you want a chance to be able to give kids facts rather than let them make up facts for themselves, because they're going to make up stories that aren't necessarily true. And often kids will think that when you're losing your temper and you're upset, that it's about them and something that they have done and a mistake that they have made, because they're really coming from a place where they're just thinking about themselves. And frankly, that doesn't really change. Most people are just thinking about themselves. But anyway, I had one afternoon, and I admit I had been particularly irritable that day, and my son said to me, "Mum, I don't think you got enough sleep last night. I think you need an early night." And he was just saying, like, "You've been really grumpy and horrible today." And he was right. And I'm glad he pulled me up on it, because that sort of acted as a bit of a circuit breaker for me to go, okay, let's just, pull on the reins here. Let's just regroup. And I needed to take responsibility for the fact that I really wasn't doing my best in that moment. And I was being unreasonable. He was quite right. He was absolutely right. But that gave me the opportunity to sort of go, look, I'm sorry. I am being too grumpy, aren't I? And I'm just not feeling that great today. It's not your fault, and I shouldn't make you feel like it is your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. Because he did think, he said later, I thought that was about me. I thought that was something I was doing wrong. So then I said, look, I think I'm gonna take a bath, and I'm gonna get an early night, and that's gonna help me feel better and do better tomorrow. I'm really sorry. So that's the language that I would put around that. And it just meant that, I could understand his experience, because his experience was, I've done something to cause this, and I'm bearing the brunt of it. And my experience was, I'm just having a bad day and I wish that it was over.
Yes.
But we both got to have our moment there, and then everyone got to move on, and they got to go to bed not thinking, I've done something to upset Mum. There's something wrong with me that she doesn't like, because that's where their minds go.
It's interesting how people go straight to that point when they see someone in a bit of a mood that they think it has something to do with an action that they've taken. Have you got any deeper feedback around how, I guess people listening, not just with their kids, but in general, how we can not own other people's stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you've got to really protect your space and your kids' space, and not take on what other people are putting out. And I think, I don't know, I think it's just good to come back and decompress after your day, after you've seen people, or to have a little debrief after experiences where you think, you know what, that's not mine. And I don't have responsibility for that, and I don't have to take that from you. And also, like, I think particularly as women, we have the sense of managing an environment and having to make it okay for everybody, and having to make sure that everybody else is okay. And often that comes at such a cost to ourselves. And I think, like, I don't want my kids to take that on. I want them to be able to, protect themselves and take responsibility for themselves, but also allow other people to take responsibility for themselves. Like, I'm often always really interested by the conversation around consent. And I know there's a little bit of a tangent, but I think, particularly in the way that I was brought up, and I think many people in our generation were brought up to be good, to not rock the boat, to not lose your temper, to not, get angry. Like, those things were pretty unacceptable. But it also meant that a lot of times we didn't stand up for our own boundaries. We didn't have agency to stick up for ourselves, and for when our boundaries have been crossed, whether that had been with words, or whether that had been physical, whether that had been emotional, we just sucked it up. But then that just allows people to cross your boundaries. So how can you consent if you don't have clear boundaries? How can you say, that's okay for me to accept from you, or that's not okay for me to accept from you, if you don't have agency over what's okay and what's not okay? I always think that's really interesting. So yeah, like, boundaries is one thing with the kids that I try to help them with, and it's so easy with kids because they will teach one another, just in their play, they will teach one another about when it's too much and when they want more. And I saw this amazing game between the kids, and in fact my daughter will say, when her brother is pushing her around or something, she'll say, no, my body, my rules. And I think that's so simple. Yeah, my body, my rules. That's quite right. And you've got every right to have rules around your body. And it's things like, if you don't want to hug someone, you don't have to hug someone. If that's going to make it socially awkward for me, that's my problem. That's not your problem. If you just want to give them a wave or a high five, or say, no, thanks, I'm good. Yeah, fine. No big deal. And I saw the kids one day playing this really interesting game, and I just observed it. And Frankie, my daughter, was upset, and she'd gone and hidden underneath some, like the clothes horse or something. And her brother, who's very empathetic, he went to see if she was okay. And then suddenly I heard this banana, kiwi fruit, banana, kiwi fruit. And I was going, what's going on? What is going on here? But the game they were playing was that when she said banana, it meant that she wanted a hug from him. And when she said kiwi fruit, it meant that she wanted him to take his hands off her. And they were just doing this thing where she was, accepting contact and rejecting contact, and they were making a complete game out of it. But she was going, here are my boundaries, and he's going, I'm respecting your boundaries. And she knew she had total agency over that, and she could say when she wanted it and when she didn't want it, And I think that's a big part of whether or not you choose to take responsibility for more than you should take responsibility for, because I think we all need the right, we all need the permission to say, no, that's not mine. And I don't feel like it's ever been particularly easy, particularly as a woman, to be able to say no. And no is a complete sentence. I learned that in therapy. No is a complete sentence. That's all you have to do.
I love it. And it's so true, because I think it's, especially in our day and age of, seeing all the negativity on TV, social media, and, just in the world in general, and all the positivity too, that sometimes we take on things that aren't our own, and it can be a real challenge for people and our kids. It's overwhelming, I think, for those, especially those more sensitive, emotionally intelligent children. They do go instantly, is this mine? And I think that whole, is this mine? No, it's not mine, that's yours. And learning that whole boundary side of things is a really great exercise.
I think that also we've got to be careful with how much media our kids are exposed to, because there's a lot going on in the world and we really don't have control over it. We've just got to deal with it on a case-by-case home level. We can't allow them to really get stressed out about the stuff that lies outside of their control. We've got to say, yeah, there's this coronavirus out there, and but you know what, our country's doing the best it can right now to keep us all safe and well, and all we have to do is follow the directions that we've been given. And look, we know what we can do, and we can wash our hands, and we can do this, and that's the thing that we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're touching on resilience now, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because obviously, when we have these ruptures with our children, we try and repair them, and then that does build resilience. How does this work, and what does resilience look like in children, do you think?
Yeah, so resilience in kids is interesting, because resilience in kids, you don't sort of look at that and go, oh yeah, that's they're strong or whatever. You've got to think about resilience as kids as something that they're developing, caused by the environment that they're in. Like, essentially, resilience as kids is not caused by who they are and what they do and what attributes they're born with. Resilience as kids is caused by who we are and what we do in their environment. So a resilient kid, or a kid that is developing resilience, they are going to feel seen and heard at home, and they know that it's safe to express their thoughts and feelings. A strong bonded relationship with their parent or caregiver. They know who they can go to ask for help. They can show empathy. They can show consideration to others, and they can be gentle with thoughts and feelings about themselves. It's a kid who will participate and persevere during activities, and they'll be developing some problem-solving abilities. They can solve boredom with their own creativity, and they can feel confident to engage in some free play activities that often involve taking some risks. And actually, that's something that should be encouraged, so long as it's, they're probably not going to hurt themselves or others. Risk taking is actually really important for developing resiliency. And then they also feel free to use words and behaviour. And notice I'm saying behaviour there, because that's sometimes the only way that a child can communicate, is by showing you with their behaviour, because they don't have words to put around it, when they need your help and support. Yeah, so I mean, their resilience is determined by the environment that they are growing up in, that they feel safe and secure there, and the influences that they're surrounded by. The people who are there that are role modelling to them and that are demonstrating the skills that they can later use, because resilience is a toolbox. it's not an attribute. It's a toolbox of things that you can draw upon that are going to help you just be able to see a way forward and keep moving forward when you're having a tough time.
Great advice there. Now, you've also got a wonderful book series to help little people through their big moments. Can you tell us a little bit about these amazing books that you've written?
Yeah, so myself and co-founder Flicker Williams, we came up with this idea to write personalised children's books that are going to help kids get through milestones and events in their early life. It was really important to us. Well, one, that the personalisation factor, which was a really cool way to use print technology today, also helps kids recall and remember and be able to draw upon the things that they've learned in that book, because it engages them a deep neurological way that allows them, every time they hear that word, their brain fires up and they're taking in more information from that story. The other thing that we did was we wanted to make sure that the stories that we wrote, they weren't just entertaining and fun for the kids and their parents to read, but they're also backed by research. So we work with child development experts, experts in child psychology and neuroscience and play therapy, and they consult as we write these stories, so that throughout the stories we weave in different strategies and tools and vocabulary and activity that kids can use in their own real life situations. So it's easy. You can go onto our website, which is mybigmoments.com, and you can look at a full personalized preview with your child's name and an avatar that looks like them in the story going through the situation. And so at the moment we've got 5 topics. So we cover getting ready to go to school, building resilience, getting ready for a new sibling, handling grief and loss, and going to hospital. So a few different things there that are going to be big moments and challenging moments in a child's life that we're actually really going to want to work through them, because I think those things can look really big and scary. We can worry about the impact that they're going to have on them, but actually they can become really empowering and then help that child build their resilience and grow their confidence and have new skills that they can actually use in their real life. Yeah.
I love it. They sound like amazing books, and I can feel a separation one in the mix coming soon.
Yeah, that'll probably be good.
But thank you so much, Hannah. Just if you want to just say the website just one more time again for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. mybigmoments.com is the website that you can go to, and you can check out all the books and a preview there. We've got a blog section as well with some helpful resources for parents. We try and make everything we do sort of a hub for parents to make the tricky job of parenting that little bit easier. And the other place that I would really recommend checking out is our Instagram account, which is @mybigmoments, because we put lots and lots of resources up there for parents as well, which is just really easy, digestible place. And that's sort of where we create a village to help one another out, and put lots of free material up there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing your incredible story and helping us turn those parenting lemons into lemonade. Truly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.